and I think you did a great job also of like breaking down kind of the idea of feminism and then toxic masculinity and all the current things that are in the culture, of course. I also think, it's like this whole pendulum thing, it's so huge, right? Because like, and that's one of the reasons for the Better Than Rich show, why we have these conversations, is to hopefully bring a little bit of sanity to the conversation. Maybe even just a little bit, but it's like, of course, it's like there's a retaliation factor, right? So when somebody is, acting in a certain way, there has to be a kind of an equal and opposite reaction to it. So when someone's being so extreme, there has to be kind of that equal and opposite reaction. And that's where we keep playing ping pong, and, it's like, that's why I look at like the political landscape and I'm like, I don't like either of these options. It's like, can we please like have some sanity around this? So anyways, not to go down that rabbit hole, but one of the things I'm curious about is, let's say someone comes to you and they realize all these things. They start to work on themselves. They start to, have conversations with the different parts of them. They start to heal themselves. But let's say a relationship was previously built and conditioned almost, maybe for years, maybe for decades, in an unhealthy way. How do you go about rewriting the story of that relationship, right? Let's say it's a marriage, right? Both are committed. They don't want to leave, but they're both unhappy. They start to work on it. But how do you actually recondition the dynamics that have become so second nature after years and years and years of being together? And quite frankly, some of the resentment, right, that's been there, some of the, dusting off the the ledger of, I remember 6 years ago when you said this, and 12 years ago you did that. How do you do that?
Yeah, that is the all important question: is how do I fix this, David? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? My first response to that is you don't. Which, like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
People will come to us, Andrew, and say, we want your help to fix our marriage. And this is what I'll say. I said, we don't do that. I don't even know what that is. And they're like, what? Kind of like you are looking at me right now. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. I don't even know what a relationship or a marriage is. Okay. But we say that all the time. I'm like, oh, I want to save my marriage. Mm-hmm. Okay. The reality is that doesn't exist. There are two individuals that come together that choose, once upon a time, they chose to enter into a relationship. Mm-hmm. What so often happens, though, is it becomes a codependent enmeshment where it's like, oh, two shall become one. Okay. Two shall become one is a myth. Okay. Two shall remain two. That's what we teach. This is interdependence. This is two individuals remaining who they are. So if we stay with that narrative, okay, we're not to save the marriage. We're not to save our partner. We're only to save or work on who? Me. The individual. So to give you an example, we have had couples who have come to us and say, we want to work with you together. And I say, no, we will work with you individually. And right now I'm working with four, is that right? 4 couples individually. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we work with the husband, we work with the wife, and those lines do not cross. Boundaries, super, super important. Boundaries, by the way, is a healthy masculine energy and must be present within everybody. But they've come to us and they've said, one, and by the way, pop quiz for everybody, guess which one, the feminine or the masculine came to us first? Can you guess, guys? Anybody? Andrew, what do you think?
The feminine?
Uh-huh. Yep, ding, ding. Mm-hmm. Because healing is a feminine energy. Mm-hmm. That's why, by the way, the masculine finds it so hard, the wounded masculine finds it so hard to do so. Because its counter doesn't make sense, and we have been shamed. To your point, it's like, oh, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they didn't talk about it. They just took it outside the barn and shot it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, because if you're going to heal, you have to ask for help. Okay. So all that to say, we first began to work with the woman, and then What happened was, in all of these cases, the woman began to heal. The woman began to see growth. The woman began to, on her own, okay, and we are very specific. Your journey is your journey. Okay? Because the last thing that the masculine ever wants, by the way, newsflash, friends, is for the feminine to come to him and say, you know what you ought to do? This is often referred to as nagging, right? Or they slide the pamphlet across the table and say, hey, babe, we should go to this marriage conference. Okay, that is incredibly, ladies, are you listening? That is incredibly emasculating. You cannot change a man. Newsflash, have you tried? It doesn't work. You can try. You can try to belittle him. You can try to berate him. You can try to threaten him. But the reality is he's not ready until he's ready. So, all that to say, we work with the individual. So we're not interested in fixing the relationship. Now, in some cases, we work with an individual who is in a relationship. We're not necessarily working with the other individual. And that particular person is growing and thriving. And that relationship may just come to a completion, as we say. Because as we know, when we grow, we begin to grow and flow and elevate away from folks who aren't in a space or choosing not to grow alongside with us. So, super hard, super difficult, because we think, oh, if I just do this, if I convince him or convince her, then she'll be on board with me. Right? The reality is, it's just you. If you heal, the world around you will heal in some ways. Now, the relationship may still not be there, right? And that's the tough stuff. As we like to say, awareness is, oh, I'm aware of my trauma. I'm aware that I need to heal. I'm aware that I need to hire David and Paige. But that's not the work. That's what we call shelf help. That's, oh, I went to the seminar, I read the book, I listened to the podcast. Okay. Where we work with, where we then take the awareness and move into implementation. And implementation is the hardest because you will, guaranteed. Here is the warning label, ladies and gentlemen. Relationships will not look the same in 6 months, in a year. You and I have experienced this, right, Andrew? I mean, if we would look back at the relationships that we have had in the last 5 years, there are people in our life 5 years ago that may not be in our life now. And that's hard and that's difficult. And I get it. It's really hard. And there is the necessary grieving and mourning that must take place in that. That's what we help folks do as well.
Absolutely. So, I think that all sounds great. I love the idea of like helping the individual, right? Not trying to fix things and just working with, saying, hey, what do you really need to do? And it's so true. If you're listening to this and you're really honest with yourself, every time a positive change occurred in any relationship, whether it was a romantic relationship or business partnership or whatever, it's when you got your shit together. Let's be honest, right? It's when you decided to step up and stop being a baby and stop making excuses. And sometimes stop being a baby and stop making excuses means having conversations with your